You know what? Wouldn't it be nice around December if you didn't have to turn around and dread December like many people do, worrying about something like bunches of reports or what's been approved or financials or you name it. Most of us love our Decembers. Lots of holidays, lots of fun, lots of really cool things. But sometimes, for certain people, especially like accountants and others, there's a lot of troubleshooting that goes into things. A lot of things that need to be closed because it's the end of the year. Okay, so I had an idea. What if we could give you something that, something real world, actually something that comes from part of our course series, that would sort of make things a lot simpler, like a workflow report, like workflows that basically tell you everything that's in a status of pending. And at the same time, I wanted to sort of answer everyone now because, as you guys may have known, we released courseware about a year ago. Then, after the first revisions, I decided to completely redo it because, well, that's the sort of thing that anal technical architects do, right? I mean, there is like some OCD. If you're a tech arch, you're going to have OCD, I promise. And if something's not your way, you're going to make it that way. It's just the nature of the field, pretty much for development in general. So we spent about a year really working on this new interface. I'm going to be showing you guys the first live interface. There's nothing like it in this particular section. And you're going to see from our day 4 number course on reporting, an actual module that teaches you how to make workflow reports that look and see all things that are basically in a pending status. Ooh, sweet, 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 sweet. So hope you guys really do like it. Again, enjoy. Hope everyone's enjoying their time out there. Let's get started. Oh, do I got a special gift for you all. So I wanted to show everyone a preview of our 4th course, and this is on workflows. And something that was really important was this real world theme. And I was going through a lot of, aspects of development, and I think one of the biggest ones is really getting that real world feel. But what we're seeing today that's changed inside the training landscape is that a lot of these labs need to be far more interactive. That's what's really missing today as price courses have gone down. And so essentially about 2 years was spent, literally, building up an architecture, partially because of the cost of doing it though, to really begin to support that. So let me show you guys some aspects that we have here. So this is the brand new instructor Brandon lab interface coming up. You guys can see it's completely browser-based, completely browser-based. And then you can see that there's some very important things that we've actually added over here to really allow for that learning experience of getting hands-on type work. Like, for example, first you see here's Visual Studio. And you can see that you've got Visual Studio to the left, and then you've got your lab guide to the right. Dear Santa, what I've always wanted is some Dynamics labs to learn from. Very important so that the person, whether they're on a tablet or on some other machine at work or, wherever they're at, they can be able to travel. And convenience was definitely a big theme. You could theoretically do this on your cell phones, although I don't quite see how it would all fit there, but still a pretty good start. Also, too, you see the side-by-side, paneling over here. So you guys can see you're able to come down and you can scroll down into our various labs while you're working and sort of get the instructions right there and then be able to come over here and be able to execute them. And you see this is full Visual Studio functionality right there. So you've got that part coming in, very good accomplishment. A lot of work's been done to focus on performance of the HTML5 RDP client, so that's very, very compatible with many, many corporate hotel, airplane firewalls. I mean, this is definitely coming from the fire, and I mean the fire of me having traveled for so many years now as a developer for hire, essentially. You can see also, too, that when we take our projects, a great deal of time's been made just to make things easier. So, like, for example, in Dynamics 365, you oftentimes need to see the results of your programming. So you guys can see that right there where you can just switch right over and tab. And when you tab over now, you're able to go ahead and see it. And you guys can see this is an interface that's extremely nice for that. And something really cool, too. You can also turn around and work with other applications. There's SQL, too. So maybe sometimes, for example, in this unit, I'm going to go ahead and do an explanation of what this lab was. And then you guys can also see that, even areas to be able to do things like copy and paste code snippets. So pretty much you can imagine this is like a developer's playground, right? And this is pretty nice. So you've got this live interactive lab that's going to be coming. So a lot of people were like, God, Brandon, what took you so long on some of your revisions? Well, this wasn't easy, but we got there. So fourth course is really exciting because, out of your 7 days of the courses, you've got day 1, which basically centers on how to use the tools. Day 2, which then centers on how to essentially get into the intrinsics of the X++ syntax and whatever else. Day 3, which has got to be forms, of course, and how to be able to alter forms. And then day 4, which is reports. And this lab comes from reporting. Now, we've covered that. That's very, very nice. Let's take the camera for a second and go on me. With a nice HTML5 remote interface for me to be able to access, and also too, I want instructions to be able to appear, and I also want tabs so I can actually be able to see things very clear, and I also want code snippets inside of my interface, and I want it to be able to operate through a very seamless sort of protocol so that way I can get through corporate firewalls. That's all Santa. So this is a completed solution, which mainly is for the purposes of being able to demo out the new interface. It's not necessarily the sort of solution that you would be seeing if you are actually doing it, because I would be typing live in the examples. But completed solutions are very, very powerful because they help to explain things. And this example you are going to love. All right. How many times have you heard users, if you've worked any appreciable time in Dynamics, say that they want something simpler for being able to see approvals? There's entire ISVs around this. Really, several of them. Around essentially, how do you see the workers and get better and get more detailed reporting on like the workers or whatever? Well, in truth, we can get that quite easily just by understanding our data model. So if we take a look over here, you guys are going to see that in the first part of this particular query, and real world queries and real world labs were a big part. I definitely tried to pull a lot from experience on just the sort of things that we're seeing to be able to make sure that those were included. Some examples have to be by the nature of teaching, need to say simplify, but it's always something nice when you can have a few there that you can take back to work and are valuable. Here's one like that. So when we look at queries, and here I'm gonna go to query. Query's already been designed or whatever else, but I'm gonna go ahead and open it. And you have to create a query first. And inside of the query, you've got this very, very simple query right here. And I mean, very, very simple data structure at least. And you guys can see it's got the workflows tracking status table, the workflow item table, and the workflow element table. You can build entire cubes on these 3 tables on workflows. This is like your ultimate source of information. Just to see it in SQL, let's take a look. And come up. And come up, there we go. And you guys can see, there we are again. Workflow item or workflow tracking status table, workflow work item, and workflow element table right there. And notice how they relate. You do a left join right over here from the workflow tracking status table, which literally tells you the status of all the workflows, at least the overall status. Then you get more particular. You get into the workflow work item table, and those are all those little things like approvals and all those little tasks that you assign to people, whether you programmatically make them or you choose to make them some other sort of way. And then finally, your workflow element tells you individual information about the element itself. And that can be extremely helpful, like who the user is, things like that, that's currently, working on it or started it or something like that. So those 3 are going to give you an entire buffet of information. Okay, so we come back. We've got it into a nice little query over here. There we go. Boom, boom. Now right here, which is talked about later on in course number 2 in the intrinsics, right? We've got relationships that already exist, but in this case we don't from the workflow work item table and the workflow element table, so we make one. Now, after we make that relationship, you guys can see over here, this is left joins coming in, workflow work item, workflow element, right? So you guys actually saw the query, and we've got the query. Okay, query's good. That's part 1. Now, if you've got a query, the other thing you need to do is you need to have somewhere where you can actually put all the data from the query. That's the table right here. And you guys can see over here where we've created a table coming from those particular, that have the same column types as the particular query used. I'm not a big fan, I'll tell you right now, of using display methods and things like that that interfere with the logic. I prefer views instead, just from a performance perspective for reports. Now, on forums, you have to sometimes, many times, but for reports, I'm not the biggest fan of doing that. And I go over those tricks when we get into the intrinsics of X++ on the day 2 series. So you guys can see these are the columns that have been listed right over here. And what you'll notice very importantly is that this is a temp table. So it goes away essentially after this session is done at some predetermined time by SQL, or whenever somebody actually accidentally reboots the server or stops the SQL service. You get the point. Anything that does that. And you guys can see you make it a table type temp DB. That's the most important thing. And then finally over here now we've got a query type report, but we've got a little bit of a mix. We kind of have a query that's going into an RDP. I'm heavily in favor of that. I really am, because there are some transformations I do like to do. And that just sort of gives me the flexibility personally to be able to do it. Like I'll show you guys an example in just a little bit of a real simple little transformation inside of our RDP class. So then finally, the most important thing of all is going to be your class right here. And this is going to be your RDP. So far, you guys have seen now, this was a sample setup. You've seen the query though. So you've seen how to set it up. You've even seen the SQL statement. And I mean, when I say the possibilities are endless on workflow reports from these 3 tables, I mean they're endless. So often, the difference between a beginning developer and a senior developer is really a knowledge of how to use what you got. Workflows are definitely a huge illustration of that. Whether this is, checking out PO approvals, journal approvals, all sorts of tasks, from sending out emails to, you pretty much name it, even doing postings. This query can cover an infinite number of scenarios almost. Okay, now you got those other 2 parts, and that was pretty simple when you really think about it. That's not too difficult, right? Not for data retrieval. But the most important thing of all is you're going to have to go ahead and let's open the designer and take a look at your class. It's got 2 methods. One method is going to literally get the temp table. You sort of need that so you can kind of like retrieve the data for the report. The second one is going to do all the logic. Very, very simple. But still, that's the base, what you actually need. This is bare bones what you need. Now watch this, because you get a very amazing report off of this. It's not the most complicated logic here. It really isn't. First thing you always do is, if you're going to use a query to be able to retrieve data, make sure that you include a runtime, attribute like this, which is SSRS report query attribute. And you can see here you pass in the string of the query. That tells it what it can use for retrieving data. Very important for pulling into the framework. All right, next step. Then over here, if you guys notice on the very first method, this is our get. What you're going to do is you're going to tell it right here which table you're going to be using at runtime, so it knows what temp table to use to be able to turn around and supply the report with data. So your entire objective is to basically fill this report with data. Now in this case, we just ran the query. And what we did was we went ahead, added a couple of ranges to the query. So there's our query equal new query. And like I said, you learn how to do this in day number 2. In fact, you learned plenty of this. Here we go out and we just add a range to it. You guys can see that right there. And very, very standard little range right here. And let's just move it over a little bit. And you guys can see over here, pending, we're going to be looking for a tracking status value of pending, right? So we want all the things that are open so someone can see it. And then we're going to look for also anything else that's not completed on the work item table. So we want any work item, any overall workflows that have not been completed. And we also want any items within those non-completed workflows that are still, open. That makes sense. Okay, got it. That was easy, right? Very, very simple, right? Values not completed. There. So, okay, that's going to tell us pretty much what's waiting, and so why certain workflows are pending. Very, very common request amongst pretty much any sort of journal posting that you end up seeing from any organization, right? All right, then we're going to take it from here. You're going to start off with the query run, standard way to be able to iterate a query, just as we go over on day 2. And you're going to start populating these table rows, right, with the values. Here we're going to use a little date time over here and pass in a date value inside of it. So there's a date time one, create a date time, and there's another one over there. You guys can see it. Each of them name two different things, and that's because sometimes they mean two different things. We could actually change that, though. There's plenty of other dates in there, but those are our two dates. So there's a transaction date for whenever it's created. We could have used modified, but it depends on what your preference is. So I just left it, but remember, you can change this to modified if you want to. And then we're going to go ahead and put this in. Okay, now from there, we're going to go ahead and begin a little bit more. And notice over here, we're going to pull some extra values over there just in case. If there's a value over here for the tracking status, or if there's a value over here for the work item table. So that gives us the options as we're sitting there populating the rows. And now we pass it in. Workflow status, user ID, due date, element time, element name, and we insert a row in the temp table. When we're finished with all those rows go into a beautiful report and supply us with the data thanks to our get method. It's that simple. All right, that is pretty cool, isn't it? Let's go a little bit further. So now we've actually seen how simple this is. All right, once we finish with that simple, it's like, wait a minute, that's it to retrieving data? And you mean I can build entire cubes and beautiful Power BIs and all kinds of stuff? Yes. Oh, yes, you can. Definitely can. Entities, you name it. And of course, entities are covered in our Day 6 course. All right, now, going back and taking a look at that, that's pretty simple. I mean, it may not seem like it right now if you're brand new, but trust me. I mean, as we finish going through these examples and you do all the labs, you'll get a pretty good feel for it, and especially with the fundamentals and the way that we build them up. But next thing you need to do is this. If someone's going to be able to click on something, you've got to have a menu item, right? Standard menu item over here. Let's go to properties. And take a look and come down for me. And come down. And you guys will notice over here that there's our standard output menu item output right there. So you create a menu item output from the menu. And then, of course, we just named it, and we told it it's going to be an SSRS report. Got it. And you've also got to have a menu, don't you? You have to, kind of place it somewhere. I mean, that's very, very important. So here we put it inside the procurement and sourcing, and we made a little extension. We made it 100, so Microsoft might be taking new extensions and making them bigger. You typically nowadays, Microsoft recommends giving them a huge number of extension or something, so then that way someone doesn't, Microsoft doesn't accidentally use the same extension number you're using. Okay, so seriously, we're wrapping up this video. First of all, I want to thank you all for the many, many letters of encouragement, the many, many emails, the many, many messages. I am so grateful. For the last few months, I have been knee-deep working on your courseware and several implementations. Many of you have called me out, so, kind of been out there getting some coding done and some solutions, right? And believe me, I think I've seen everything the last year, and I've loved it, as many of you know. And many of you know that I've got this sort of energy whenever I'm on the site, too, because it's kind of fun, I have to admit. I do this because I kind of love it. But let me tell you this. First of all, I hope that you learned a really good tip today on how to be able to create a report. A really nice report that you can actually take back to work and use and be able to save that time so that you give your financial team a nice gift for Christmas, or your approval team, or your manufacturing team, because workflows pretty much connect everywhere. And not only that, but you're just scratching the surface. You could take these 3 tables and build almost an infinite number of reports and cubes to apply to all scenarios. Believe me, I've never had a client yet who wasn't extremely grateful that they got to use this. So I hope you love it too. Also, for those of you wanting to learn, I thought I would show you the interface this time for a very good reason. I wanted you to understand that, in all seriousness, things are taken very seriously. Learning is taken very seriously. Some of you may know now or whatever else, but most recently this year, I've been named a Microsoft Regional Lead Trainer. We are going to light it up now that they got me in there for Dynamics. I'm just telling you, because you guys can see I don't exactly bring the calm. But I'm going to be out to many sites also. We're going to be doing a lot of good training. We're also going to be a lot of good programming and consulting as normal. I'm looking forward to you guys seeing a lot of exciting things this upcoming year. And especially, again, thank you all. It wouldn't be possible without you. If you need to reach me for anything, you know what? End of December, you will be seeing this interface that I've shown today live. Count on it. Anyway, love everybody. Thank you so much for all the support. Bye-bye, and keep on coding and practicing.